Rome did not kill Caligula because he was mad. They killed him because he stopped pretending. For decades, the empire survived on a fiction that absolute power could look restrained, that tyranny could wear the costume of tradition. Caligula removed the costume. And once he did, Rome faced a question it could not afford to answer. Was the problem the emperor, or the system itself? When Caligula became emperor in 37 CE, Rome did not expect chaos. He was young, popular, and the heir to a carefully managed dynasty. The early months of his reign were stable. He granted bonuses to soldiers, recalled exiles, and staged public games. Nothing about this suggested insanity. Then, within a year, his behavior shifted sharply, and Rome never recovered a coherent way to describe what followed. Caligula was not remembered as mad because he was unpredictable. He was remembered as mad because he broke the operating rules of power so completely that no other explanation survived. Ancient sources describe cruelty, extravagance, sexual transgression, and deliberate humiliation of the elite. Caligula allegedly declared himself a god dressed as Jupiter and demanded worship. He is said to have planned to make his horse a consul. These stories are often dismissed as exaggeration, but focusing on their literal truth misses the structural problem. What mattered was not whether Caligula believed these things, but what his actions did to the system around him. Roman imperial power depended on a delicate contradiction. The emperor held absolute authority, but had to pretend he did not. The Senate still existed. Laws were still passed. Rituals of restraint signaled continuity with the republic. Stability required performance. Caligula refused to perform it. After a severe illness early in his reign, Caligula abandoned the conventions that made absolute power tolerable. He did not hide dominance behind tradition. He displayed it openly. Senators were mocked publicly. Noble families were financially ruined through arbitrary accusations. Executions became theatrical. The point was not efficiency. It was demonstration. This is where the appearance of madness emerges. Roman elites were accustomed to cruelty, but not transparency. Violence was supposed to be procedural, justified, and indirect. Caligula made it personal and visible. He did not merely punish, he forced witnesses to understand that survival depended entirely on his mood. The alleged appointment of his horse, Incitatus, is instructive regardless of its factual accuracy. Whether literal or symbolic, the message was clear. Offices existed only by imperial permission. If a horse could be consul, then the Senate's dignity was already gone. The insult worked because it did not need to be carried out to be understood. Caligula also collapsed the boundary between public and private power. He openly seized the wives of senators. He turned dinners into loyalty tests. He forced elites to applaud their own degradation. These acts were not impulsive. They were systematic violations of unspoken limits. The Roman political class depended on those limits to function. From a structural perspective, Caligula's rule exposed a flaw in the imperial system. He relied on self-restraint by the emperor without any reliable enforcement mechanism. As long as emperors pretended to respect tradition, the illusion held. When one stopped pretending, the system had no response except assassination. Calling Caligula mad solved the narrative problem. It allowed Roman historians to preserve the legitimacy of the system by isolating failure in the individual. If Caligula was insane, then Rome itself remained rational. The alternative, that the system could not survive a ruler who took its logic seriously, was harder to accept. Caligula did not invent tyranny, he removed its disguise. He demonstrated what absolute power looks like when it no longer seeks approval. That made him intolerable, not because he was cruel, but because it was explicit. By 41 CE, members of the Praetorian Guard killed him in a corridor. The Senate briefly considered restoring the Rebevadum. Instead, they elevated Claudius. The system chose continuity over correction. The lesson was learned quietly. Emperors must appear restrained even when they are not. Caligula's reputation endured because it served a purpose. Madness explained what structure could not admit. When power depends on voluntary limits, the greatest threat is not rebellion, but honesty. Caligula did not fall because he was irrational. He fell because he revealed how little rationality was required.